Oh, it's so great to be here.
Thank you
I
so
just
much.
love the idea that you're in South Africa and I'm here in Seattle, and we're just chatting.
Yes.
I think maybe 2 years ago, that would have seemed like something space, crazy, science fictiony. But here we are. How are you?
Josh and I say this all the time, Madeleine. We say, imagine if it wasn't for COVID, people's availability or even openness to do something different.
No, for sure. I mean, I don't know if you know about me, but I'm a COVID success story.
No
Uh,
way.
oh yeah, oh yeah. My life has changed so much that I'm on a completely different path. And it's like things have come full circle. So you know about my years in late night television. I co-created The Daily Show with Liz Winstead, and I ran it as executive producer for the first 7 years. I've got an Emmy and a Peabody, and I hired Stephen Colbert and Steve Carell, and John came because I was there, and Mo Rocca just walked into my office one day and I was like, "You're going to be a correspondent." And I had worked for Dave Letterman. I had my own company and created shows for like every network. But 5 years ago this April, I moved to Seattle, of all places. I still wonder what I was thinking, but to reunite with a man who broke my heart in 1986,
Plot twist.
dumped me, and then found me on Facebook, which is why all this Facebook controversy I take really personally, because I know they're horrible and they're ruining the planet and the world. And yet I owe them a lot, and I hope they never want me to pay it back if they get into hard times. I know Mark Zuckerberg lost a lot of money last week when, or back a couple of days ago when
Yes.
Facebook went dark. And I'm like, don't come after me. I'm not paying you back. We never had a deal. But anyway, so I moved to Seattle. It'll be 5 years in April. And I was sick of TV. I was sick of what I felt was just pushing rocks up a hill. I felt like
Right.
Sisyphus, but much more public, and a story that people wouldn't tell for as long. And I would never become like an adverb, Sisyphusian, or is that an adjective? But anyway, I wouldn't become that, a part of speech. And I came to Seattle and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to change. And then I turned 60, and my husband proposed, and then he got me a certificate for a cooking class. And I took this cooking class. I've always been obsessed with food since I was 12. It's kind of maniacal, but there it is. Everybody has their passions. Mine was giving pleasure through things that I put in a pan. And it was wonderful for all of my, family and friends, but it was always a hobby. It was never anything else. So he gives me, Sam, that's my now husband, gives me a gift certificate. And I take this thing called knife skills, and people have mentioned that he was very trusting to allow me to do that. And I got recruited at the end of the class to become a chef and teach corporate team building events at this place in Seattle called Blue Ribbon Cooking.
No
So,
way.
oh yeah. So I pivoted, dude. I pivoted at the age of 60 from, arguably a very successful, storied career in TV comedy and, high up in the ranks, to the very bottom, totally other industry, an industry which is actually very dangerous, like physically. And so in the beginning, I was getting burnt, I was getting cut. There's a burn on your arm they call the blue ribbon tattoo. I had like 4 of them. I was tatted. I had sleeves. I never really was that kind of person. And then Sam proposes, and this would have been in like early September of 2020. And I
2020, yes.
start, yes, and I start planning my dream wedding. I'm a producer. My wedding is very produced. It involves rhinestone flip flops and all kinds of a timeline with shots of tequila and glasses of champagne and a fire pit. And we're getting married, and I've pivoted, and this is amazing. And then COVID hits. And the first place in Seattle to close, COVID, the first deaths of COVID in the United States were about 8 miles from my house.
Wow.
And even before that, when you hear the word virus, the last thing you want to do is go in a closed space with a lot of people and cook food and eat it. So Blue Ribbon closed. My wedding got canceled. Like, just, I held on. And it just, the writing was on the wall. It wasn't going to happen. No one was going to travel. We ran in front of a judge, and it was the last day you could go in the courthouse here in Bellevue. And we got married and then proceeded to have our honeymoon in quarantine, which is something I do not recommend. It was
I thought honeymoon was quarantine.
The worst. There were so many shoes. I was like, how can a person have so many shoes, and why are they all in the living room? And I got very depressed. My pivot was gone. My wedding was gone. Everything I was living for. And so I just sort of put on sweatpants like everybody else and started laying on the couch a lot because there was really nothing else to do. I don't know if you know anything about Seattle, but it rains a lot here.
Really?
So, oh God, it's just like the winter. There's no snow, very little, maybe once, but it's just constant gray rain. It gets dark at 4 p.m.
No.
And
I would die.
Yeah.
I would die.
You would die.
I love the sunshine.
Well, I was dying. And then I don't know what happened. Something called me. Like, I'm a spiritual person, but not, if you ask me like actual questions, probably will find out I'm a little bit of an agnostic, but something called me and dragged me off the couch into the kitchen. I called my husband. I threw him my iPhone, and I just sort of said in a stupor, I'm going to make some pasta and you're going to shoot it on my phone and I'm going to put it on YouTube. And I started a YouTube cooking channel called Mad in the Kitchen. And guess what?
What?
It's taken off. I've been on the Today Show, which here is a very big deal. 3 times. I'm a regular on 2 other TV shows. I now have a deal. I'm developing my show as a show. I'm back, but I'm back in a different way that I never would have anticipated. And it's all because of COVID. So there.
I'll share my own testimony, my COVID pivot testimony at the end.
Okay.
So that you don't feel like you've influenced us, myself and Josh. Ours is interlinked. So we'll share it with you at the end. Okay, but there's a lot of what you mentioned about personal life that I feel like is so interlinked with what I'm going through. So one of 2 questions is, what is better to find later on in life? Is it success or love?
I think love. I think like the good news about what I'm doing now is, I'm developing this show. I have a deal with a great production company. They're owned by a giant advertising agency. They're looking for brands. I'm developing my dream show, but I really don't care. I feel like I don't have anything to prove. I've done all that. I mean, you can agree with me. I gave the world the Daily Show. I think I can go lay down if I want to. I don't feel like I have.
You have nothing else to prove.
That's it. I'm done.
Absolutely.
So, love is so much more important because it fills your heart and it fills your days and it gives you, I think success in the end is empty. I've been incredibly successful. And during that time, I don't think I've ever been as unhappy.
No way.
Oh, yes, way.
Explain. What happened?
Well, I think that when you're on it, I've been on this ride twice. I was on it with David Letterman, with Late Night with David Letterman in the late 80s. And then again on the Daily Show with John. And when a show clicks into overdrive and becomes sort of like not only a success, but a success story,
yes,
the stakes get way too high. There's this sense that we're getting all these accolades. We don't really deserve them. I think all comedians, and you can vouch for this, suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome.
100%.
Well, maybe not in South Africa, but the ones here are just damaged. And
everyone.
It's what
I did.
Comedy is a defense mechanism.
Yes.
And I think that you're covering pain. And what comedians do, and I consider myself part of it, although this is the first time I've ever been in front of the camera, ever. I've hidden sneakily in the
Josh
back with a
got you
loud
out.
voice. Yeah, exactly. I was too scared. I never wanted to do stand-up. I thought, I don't want to stand there with a microphone and people who had to buy 2 drinks look at me and go, okay, lady, crack me up or else. That felt like way too much pressure.
Pressure,
Whereas if I'm in the back of the room, there's no pressure. It's just fun. It's all bonus. And so that's how I feel. So anyway, when the success happened and the articles started happening, the day in, day out life on the show became terrible. Because suddenly it wasn't like we're a bunch of funny people throwing spaghetti at a wall, not literally, metaphorically. Although in my case, I now do it literally to see if
I get
it. Which is kind of corny, but there you go. But so everybody on the staff, especially the writers, but everybody just feels this pressure that every show has to be better than the one before and as good as the reviews and the hype. And you can't, since that's sort of an untangible measure, there's just always this sense of it's going to go away and we really are terrible and no one's ever seen it, which just surgically removes the joy of the process. And so for myself, I've run a lot of shows. And even in the beginning of the Daily Show, when I had the power, I try to make it really fun and try to make everybody feel incredibly appreciated. Because I always say that if I had wanted to work alone, I would have gone into poetry. And I think that television is it's like an orchestra. And me as the conductor, I'm only as good as the worst oboe player. And I just try to make, sort of reinforce the team aspect of it. But when one person is singled out, then that kind of goes away. And it's really everybody supporting this one person whose face is on the outside, who will never really be satisfied by definition. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So the show gets better because everybody's working really, 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 really hard.
Yes.
But you know what's missing? The love. And it just becomes much more of a job than a sort of fun, silly adventure because nobody's watching. The idea that nobody's watching is very liberating creatively.
I guess that's what also makes you a better stand-up when you're starting out, right? You're just you're just going out there with no point to prove and just wanting to have the utmost fun until the pressure starts. Now you have to headline. You go from headlining to doing your own shows. Now you go from doing your own shows to doing a whole tour. And there's so many people that are responsible. I mean, that you are responsible for, or that your talent is responsible for, right?
Yes, you feel the pressure. And I think that it's kind of a dirty joke of, the universe that success is awful. It's what we strive for, kind of our whole lives. And the dirty little secret is that enjoy the time before the success, because success comes with a very high price tag. It's kind of like a monkey's paw situation. Be careful what you wish for, or wish it very carefully.
As I listen to you speak, I think of all the greats that have graced your office, that have walked past your corridors or through your corridors, that have sat in the chairs that you've looked at and you thought, there's something to this Steve Carell chap or this Colbert guy. What is it that helps you identify what we've come to know as the greatest talk show hosts and perhaps some of the greatest actors? Because I think Steve Carell is right up there with the best.
Oh, he is a genius, and he's done so much drama as well. I never knew the guy could pull that off, but he really has done it. Great.
Foxcatcher, he was amazing, right?
Yes. Not a laugh in the fucking thing, not a smile. Am I allowed to say fuck? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Well, I don't want to brag, but there's no one else here to do it. So I would like to say that I have an insanely good gut.
Yes.
I have it. There's no words involved. There's no, it's not like I analyze it. I get this thing and it's a gut. And I was sent a tape by an agent at William Morris named Mike August. Now, I love Mike August, and we're really good friends, but he had this sixth sense, not for talent, but for free food. He was this guy that would always, even when I was at Letterman, if there would suddenly be like food, there would be Mike August. I go, how did you come here from like, 6th Avenue and you got here so fast? I didn't even know there were ribs in the copy room. But I was at the Daily Show, and it would have been like the second year Craig was still the host.
Yes.
And he sent me a tape and goes, I want you to take a look at this guy, Stephen Colbert. I think he'd be a great correspondent for you. So it was a bunch of sketches from the very short-lived Dana Carvey show, which was a primetime sketch show that, by the way, I was asked to work on, and I said no. And because I was really happy at the Daily Show, and Brad Gray, who was involved in it, who may he rest in anything but peace, apparently said to my friend who had reached out to me, tell her to call me when she wants to be in show business. Really bitchy. But anyway, I didn't take that job. I stayed at the Daily Show. It was on, I think, 3 episodes, and then. But what it did was there were some brilliant sketches, and there was one in particular that caught my eye, and I just watched over and over again because it was so friggin' funny. And it was called Waiters Who Are Nauseated by Food. Brilliant premise,
man.
right?
Yes.
And it's Stephen Colbert, and there's someone at the table, and he's going through the specials of the day, and he's just gagging. And he can't. Today's special is cream of leek and potato soup, and it just killed me. And so I called him back and I go, yeah, send him over. And so Colbert started, and it was just an honor to watch him in the fields, because on the Daily Show we would send the correspondents out into the field, and Steve Carell would later describe it as playing an improv game with an unsuspecting partner. Because we would find these like stories that had irony embedded in them, but the people usually weren't aware of that irony. And so we would treat it very, very, very seriously. And the correspondent would be in the character of the intrepid idiot reporter, and the person really wouldn't know what to do. And it was its own unique art form. So anyway, Colbert comes on, he's killing it. He's the nicest guy in the world. He's funny when you're with him. It's like, it's a faucet, but it's not a faucet of attitude. It's a faucet of brilliant, multi-layered jokes. Like, it's insane. So after like 3 segments, I go, okay, this is going to be the craziest thing I've ever done. But I call Mike August back and I go, okay, you're going to think I've lost my mind, but do you have another one? Like, this Colbert character is amazing. Do you have anyone else? Wow. Yeah. He doesn't laugh me out of the room or off the phone.
Yes.
He says, yes, Madeleine, go back to that tape of the waiters who are nauseated by food that you loved so much, and look at the other waiter. That's his best friend and his writing and performing partner, Steve Carell.
No.
So I'm like, we'll send him over. Isn't as quick a launch as Colbert.
Yes.
He's figuring it out. He's much more of a vessel, and he hasn't clicked in. And my producers in the field, who were my babies, but they were bitches, and they were like, this guy's not good. And I was like, give him a chance. I have a really good feeling about him. Just give him a chance. And they were like, no, he's not Colbert. He's not nearly as funny. And I'm just like, could you please be quiet, because I am going to give it a couple more shots, because there is something there.
Yeah.
So then I sent him out with Stuart Bailey. Now, Stuart Bailey would become the supervising producer, but he's one of the funniest human beings I've ever met. And I just thought, if anyone can crack this guy, it's going to be Stu. So we did a story, and I think George Takei was in it for Star Trek. No way,
from Star Trek.
Yeah. And they were shooting in Los Angeles in a park called Griffith Park. It's been in a lot of movies. like rebel without a cause. But it's very.
What are you rebelling against?
What?
What are you rebelling against?
Right, exactly. He doesn't have a cause. He's even said it. He doesn't have a cause. He's just a rebel. End the movie. But anyway, told you there's no cause. He's just angry, like comedians. So Stewart takes him out there, and he's wearing a trench coat, and we have this absurdly large mic cube, which has the Daily Show logo. And we would just take the ones that you would see on the local news, and we make them like 4 times bigger. So you have this absurdly large mic cube, and yes, he's wearing his trench coat, and Stewart puts him about 20 feet up on a very steep incline, and he does his walk and talk. Now, the walk and talk is a very important part of the television news package. It's where the correspondent does 2 things at once. They walk and they talk. And their eyes it's very hard. And their eyes meet the camera with an earnestness that almost can't be measured. So we, of course, the basis of the Daily Show was pretending we were serious news people to make fun of what idiots they were. And so he's got the mic cube, and he's staring at the camera, and he's walking toward it, but he's going down a really, really, really steep hill. And he did this genius thing where the top of his body was completely still, but the bottom of his body was going crazy. And his legs were flying to the left and to the right, but you wouldn't know it from the face. And I made Stewart show me the raw footage, I think 8 times in an edit bay. And I was laughing so hard that the next day I called his manager and I go, "We're going to make a deal here." And that is how Steve Carell's career began, or began after Saturday Night Live and the Dana Carvey show.
You know what? I always wonder, when you're working with such great talent, when from the first day that you see them walking into the studio or your office in their worn out jeans and their old New Balance sneakers and their t-shirt and their and their baseball hat, just normal guys, right? Off the street, from the subway. No idea what's going to happen to them in a few years. When you've been working with such talent from the day you saw them like that, when they're just wearing a Seiko watch and that off-white shirt, to 5 years later, now they're a big deal in the show itself, and it looks like the world is their oyster. Hollywood is going to embrace them. What is the fundamental change that you see in a human being? Because I'm always fascinated about the human condition, especially when change is ahead. Whether they say you've got cancer, you don't have that much to live, or they've said you've won the lottery, or they've said you graduated high school, something about your demeanor always changes, right? So from great talent like that you've seen coming up, what are the changes that you've seen throughout the years?
It's the same thing as when the show gets successful. I think that the stakes get higher, and it's inevitable that they change. They change. The money changes you. The prestige changes you. The incredibly successful career, because suddenly, especially with the internet, people are just coming at them left and right. And once you're famous, everybody thinks they know you and thinks that they have a right to have a dialogue with you because they know your character, they see you on TV, and it's really a one-sided relationship, because the comedian or the actor is just, looking into a camera and putting it out there. But on the other side of that camera are millions of people feeling like, oh, this guy's my friend because I like him, and therefore I should be able to walk right up to him in a restaurant and tell him how much I like him. And so right off the bat, they put up a guard. There's just like this guardrail that goes up, because suddenly, you have the adoration of the millions of fans, and you have the adoration of millions of fans. And that can be, a burden, not like one that I feel sorry for anyone for having to bear, but at the same time, it is definitely a thing. And it changes everything. It changes, it's like if you put a drop of red pepper into a stew, it changes the chemistry of that stew for better or for worse. Sorry, I'm making hand signals at my husband who's making the dog go all crazy.
We've seen this all the time. We're familiar with that.
Yeah, right. I don't have any babies, so you won't see that. But I do have a dog who has a voice, and we're hoping it doesn't kick in. But yeah, no, I think that there's a molecular change that happens, and it's inevitable, and it happens. But if you talk to, this is not quite an answer to this question, but it is tangential. And Doug Herzog was the president of Comedy Central, and it was really his vision to create a daily show. Wow. He was obsessed with Sports Center, which is on ESPN, and he wanted Comedy Central to their version of Sports Center, which would be the definitive show that if something happened in the world, people would feel it necessary to watch Comedy Central. And I said no, like a million times. I had no interest in doing that. But if you ask Doug Herzog, and because the 25th anniversary of The Daily Show just came up, and we were all in contact, what his favorite time of his entire career was, he will tell you the first year of The Daily Show.
Wow.
Yeah. We didn't have to do a pilot. We got a year commitment right off the bat. And so it was built in that we could have fun and figure out what we were. It took that pressure off. I did a late night show. This one breaks my heart on BET. It was called Don't Sleep. And it was five days a week. And it was at 11 o'clock. And it was like a late night talk show for BET about the issues of African Americans. And I was just leading it. I had put a pretty much like 80% Black team in place. And I taught everybody their jobs. Wow. It was like flying a 747 while you're building it, because I realized that I needed segment producers, but there weren't any Black segment producers who had ever worked on shows. So I got a journalist, and I was like, all right, Barry, and here you go. Like, you're going to be trained as we go. And this is what I realized. He didn't know what a segment note looked like. They didn't know the format. They were like, and it was absolutely incredible. But the business model of BET, which was tragically flawed, was that our show had to be a huge success in 8 weeks. And that's never happened. I mean, The Daily Show wasn't just 2 months. I know. The Daily Show wasn't a huge success for 5 years. And it doesn't happen. And it really doesn't happen without massive, off-network promotion. They didn't do any promotion. And we put together this show and this team, and it was just a magical experience for me. And I feel like if the show had succeeded, it would be a different world, because there would have really been a place for young Black people to see their world reflected and taken apart and commented on and explained and questioned. And that just doesn't really exist. And I know that Trevor is Black, but he's South African, and it's not the Black American experience in the same way that this was. And what happened was, it just took away all that joy, that sense of nothing matters. We can do whatever we need to, and let's just play, and we will eventually find it. Instead, you're working with like a ticking clock up on the wall, like
a time bomb.
It's like a time bomb in my office. Like, we have 8 weeks. We better make this happen, or we're all going to explode into oblivion. And that's what happened.
How does one know when to get off the roller coaster? When you've had enough and the ride is done? Is it when you have a lot of Emmys, or you've made enough money, or you've made enough stars? When do you know that?
No, for me,
when did Madeleine know? Yeah.
No, I knew when I got to Seattle. I literally had to physically leave Los Angeles and New York. I grew up in New York, and, obviously The Daily Show started there. And the last sort of big TV job I did was I ran the studio portion of National Geographic Explorer for a season. And that was really cool. And
I can imagine.
Yeah. And at a certain point, our host was this guy named Richard Bacon, who's big in Britain. And he ended up getting arrested in London for soliciting a prostitute. And suddenly we had no host. And so we started doing these.
Not for having a panda in his backyard. something National Geographic affiliated. Like
you seriously, he killed an orca. Poaching gorillas. Maybe there was a gorilla suit. But anyway,
he's not hosting illegal brawls at the back of his yard of gorillas from the Congo.
Yeah, really. He was getting ivory. He had an ivory factory in his shed. Pet tigers. They were Bengal tigers. No. But anyway, unfortunately for Richard, and his career has rebounded, which never would have happened had he been female. But he rebounded, and he's back on some big morning show in London, and he's great. I love Richard, and he's a flawed person, but he embraces it. But what happened was, after he was no longer on the show, we had a series of guest hosts, and it was Dan Rather, Jeff Goldblum, Ted Danson. It was just hilarious, and I got to produce all of these people,
incredible people,
teach them how to be a host of a TV show, which, you know, Ted Danson is an actor on TV, but he doesn't know how to hold a book cover. I've taught so many people how to hold a book to a camera so that your hands don't cover the title or the name of the author. You have to put your hand on top. It's like this.
Wow.
And I've taught a lot of people to do that, but then it became super fun. Yes, there you go. Next time you're on the talk show and you have a book, you'll know. Don't
how to hold it.
Yeah, from the top. It seems very simple, yet no one seems to go to it instinctively.
Yes.
So after that was done, that was fun. It was a rush. I got to be home in New York and whatever. But then the business of creating and selling TV shows really changed, and it changed sort of in a lot of different ways simultaneously. I often called it the perfect storm of shit, because there was a writer's strike in 2008. There was also a recession, but during that writer's strike, reality television kind of took off, and that ate a lot of, like, the TV that I produce is in a TV studio, which is expensive. It has guild writers, which are expensive, writers guild. It has, you know, you need 5 cameras. All of those need assistants and operators, and you need a lighting grid and a gaffer and all. It's not cheap. And so the challenge to get them placed with, once someone could just go, no, we're just going to go and watch these housewives argue and drink
at their house.
Cheaper. At their house. There's no studio, it's like the house. So that was one thing. And then the internet just kind of came out. And all of a sudden, I always describe it as, it was like someone took a bowling ball and dropped it on the entertainment industry, and it just shattered into thousands of tiny pieces, but like a jellyfish, each little piece had its own, so it was living. And so all of the development executives suddenly had smaller budgets, and all the agents, if I would go to my agent and go, I have this great idea, can you set up some meetings? He would just make 5 phone calls, and I'd have 5 meetings, and I'd either sell it or I wouldn't. But in the good old days, I could have a notion and get a pilot. Like, it wasn't like that anymore. I got turned down to run a show on the Game Show Network because they said that I didn't have any game show experience. It was a comedy game show. And I was like, I have to go get a Q-tip, because I think you just said that
I don't have any experience.
I can't produce a fucking game show. Like, how small-minded could you be? But yet that was what I was dealing with, and it was really hurtful, and it was frustrating. And so when I first moved here, I was straddling when I moved to Seattle, and I had, like, I was working a late night show that was about to go on E. I had been hired to develop, and we had sold a comedy satirical show for Channel 4 in London. And I was supposed to go to New York to do a pilot presentation with a Black comedian named Reese Waters, who we were going to develop with Al Roker's production company. So I was like in business, and we were drinking champagne because we got green lights. And then within the space of, and I swear it was 11 days, let's make it 8 because then it sounds like Hanukkah. All of the shows went away, boom, 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 and just vanished into nothingness. And that's when I was like, I'm done. I'm really done. The joy is completely gone. There's no fun and creativity left. It's torturous. And I feel abandoned by an industry which actually owes me quite a bit, but no one seems to really think of that.
You were feeling like an army vet.
I did. I felt like an army vet with no legs. And probably like Agent Orange poisoning, and I was hearing the ringing, all of the things that could happen.
Yes.
Lost all of my best friends. And I did. I felt like an army vet. And so I sit up under the on-ramp. No, I didn't do that. Okay. I didn't ask for money. No, I just was kind of like, then the cooking thing happened. Like, it was the weirdest thing because I didn't have to do anything. I just sort of made myself open to it emotionally and intellectually. And then it happened. It happened. I can't explain it. And so now I'm developing this show, which is Mad in the Kitchen Live. And it's pretty much like a comedy cooking talk show for people in food, but it's global. So you're going to come on because we've got this. I have a cloud now. I've got all these like high-end tech experts have like glommed onto me, and I have a cloud, and in the cloud is like everything. It's like a television studio. So I did this 8 weeks from my house where I cooked with a different cook all around the world, and then 3 people cooked along in their homes around the world. And I cooked with a woman in Johannesburg. She was an Indian cook, and we made. She was an Ayurvedic expert. But for her, it was 2 a.m, but she was on my show. And a man from London
cooking at 2 a.m.
2 a.m. She didn't come to the rehearsal. Her husband stood in. But Damayanti Gotchar.
That's her name.
That's her name. And it was great. We made potatoes and peppers. For her, it was 2 a.m. But my point is that now it's this technology that we're on. But now imagine it sort of like expanded to the way that you can be anywhere and have pretty close to network quality picture and sound. And so now the idea of my show is to connect the world one dish at a time, one kitchen at a time. I'm connecting the world. So my show will always have people cooking along all over the world. It will have chefs from all over the world. And there's a big, I'm going to use comedians, but I'm going to give them jobs, like go head to head with the prep cook cutting onions, but you can't cry. So right now I'm in the I can do whatever I want phase, and I'm just having the time of my life developing the dream comedy show that now has cooking in it for myself, because I've just developed formats, as you've seen, for others. And now I get to turn my evil genius on myself. And whether or not it happens, I'm having the best time I've ever had just coming up with concepts. Like we want to take a speed eater to outside of, let's say, a stadium when a sports event is letting out, and have them go head to head with fans eating hot dogs off of the hot dog carts that wait for the fans to come out of the stadium. And we'll keep going back. Like it'll be like a live runner. So there'll always be like things unfolding that you don't know what's going to happen. We're going to take rotisserie chickens and have a comedian try to return them to the wrong supermarket. So basically,
that's not our bird.
So exactly, you take a Costco bird to, QFC, that's a market here, or Ralph's, and you take a Ralph's bird to Costco and just see what happens.
You know what you are living now. You're actually. Are you familiar with any of Wayne Dyer's work?
Oh, I'm gonna write it down. Wayne Dyer?
Yes, Dr. Wayne Dyer.
I gotta find out.
This man got me through COVID. I think I listened to I listened to 30 minutes of Wayne Dyer in the morning. I'd listen to 30 minutes of Wayne Dyer before going to bed. He's amazing. He's basically the father of modern spiritualism, right?
Okay.
But people have made popular now. He's the reason why Oprah Winfrey Show changed from what it used to be, a talk show, to more of a giving spiritual show.
Yes.
He's who helped the pivot. But there's one book from Lao Tzu that he wrote that precedes the Bible even. It's called the Tao Te Ching.
Yes.
Man, Madeleine, you are living the Tao.
I am. And as I told you, like, see, here comes the dog. Dippy, come here.
We love the dogs.
Sam, please get her. We have a bad combination here because what she's barking at is the garbage truck. So it's sort of like let me conjure my dad. No barking.
You've clearly heard of the Tao, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I do believe it because I do. I'm a New Yorker. I'm skeptical, but I believe it because it has happened to me. And because now, I've gone through my life where I get to the lowest of lows and I'm about to, it's about to be terrible. Yeah. And then it's almost like some magical gentle hands just like lift me up and set me on a different path.
Yes.
And everything is fine. And it has happened so many times. I'll tell you this. So Sam, my husband, in 1986, I was working at Italian television. I did a semester abroad in Italy. I spoke Italian, and I worked for the New York office of Radio Televisione Italiana, which was Italian TV. But I wanted and needed to work for David Letterman. There was no internet. There were no, there weren't even DVRs. So if you were going to watch a show, you needed to watch it at the time that it was on, or you were screwed.
Appointment viewing.
So, but this one was 12:30 at night, and I was working. That was late. But I kept on hearing these rumblings. There was no internet, so you didn't see it there. You just kind of talked to people with your mouth and your ears, and they would tell you there's this really amazing thing happening at 12:30 at night on NBC. And so one night I kind of was like, all right, I'm staying up. Stayed up and I watched Late Night with David Letterman. But to me, it was not an entertainment experience. It was so much more. It was a calling. Yeah. I saw that show and every molecule in my body told me, you must be a part of this. And so I started this really lame one-woman campaign where I was sending resumes and whatever. And RAI had a deal with NBC. So I got tickets to the show and I went to the show and I saw this man on the floor of the studio looking like he was running the world. And I said, I want to be that guy. And that guy was Robert Morton. And he was a segment producer and he would become my boss and I would become him. I would become a segment producer on the floor. The audience would see me. And then I thought, you couldn't come up with a better wish? Where's the truck of money? Wouldn't healing cancer have been a better thing to be able to ask for?
You just love the headphones and the piece of paper.
I wanted the headphones. Yeah, I wanted the yellow legal pad and a binder, a clipboard. So that would happen, but not so fast. It didn't happen so fast. So I had sent all these resumes and I had spoken to the really good friend of a friend of mine named Darcy Hetrich, and she was a bitch. And she was like, I can't help you. You're never going to get a job. Give up. And I'm going to get married and move to California. And I don't have time to meet you. So I ended up taking this job at Italian television, where I was the United States Bureau for a 6-hour-long show that was on every Sunday. It was an institution in Italy. It had a soccer game and a movie inside of it. And then there was a live studio experience. And I was covering all of the United States. And in Rome, there were 150 people and they were obsessed with America. So I'm doing, junkets with celebrities. I'm interviewing Jane Fonda and Jeff Bridges and Kevin Bacon and Sylvester Stallone. I'm going to the Custer battlefield. I'm going to the Oscars a day before. I'm like doing live satellites with Jacques Cousteau and Gina Lollobrigida. And I'm sending swimming babies and nuns who race miniature horses and a guy that gets in a sleeping bag with 36 rattlesnakes to Rome. Then I meet Sam, and I meet him. Even that has layers on layers of coincidence, but I won't go into it because people will stop listening. But
they will never dare do that. You are too interesting for that. Me and Josh are so interested. Go ahead, please. Okay,
so I meet Sam, and I meet him at an art opening of Robert De Niro Sr. Now, my father was friends with Robert De Niro Sr. because my father had studied painting, and he was part of my parents' class of artist friends. My father, whose name was Eugene, by the way, would become a mechanical engineer and an academic, but he always loved the art world. And so I would get invited to these Robert De Niro Senior openings. But I had this other connection with Robert De Niro, which was I interviewed him for Italian TV and spent 2 days with him. Radio Televisione Italiana. And I spent 2 days with him in New York. And we went to dinner with Joe Pesci, Harvey Keitel, and Sonia Braga. We went dancing at Heartbreak and the Area Club. I mean, it was the pinnacle of my life. And I'm in Taxi Driver. I was in New York. Yes, if you go back to Taxi Driver and the scene where he has the mohawk, I'm behind him. I'm 15 years old and I'm chewing gum and staring right at the camera. So I've got this like Robert De Niro thing happening. And I go to the Robert De Niro Senior opening. And Sam, meanwhile, had moved to New York from Berkeley, where his neighbor was Robert De Niro's aunt, or Virginia Admiral's aunt, who was Robert De Niro's mother. So he got invited to this opening, and I see Sam Packard, and it's love at first sight. They called me the next day.
What's Sam doing at this time that made him stick out?
He's an architect
at an art exhibition. Everything is interesting at an art exhibition, I guess. What made Sam stick out?
He just was so cute. He was 6'2" and
striking a pose, holding his chin, looking interested. What was he doing?
Just as I said, I have a really good gut, right?
Yes.
So some of it is not even quantifiable. It's just I looked and I was like, it was that, the same way I knew of Stephen Colbert, but I wasn't laughing as hard. I was more like, oh my God, like there's my mate. And so he would call me and he was like, no, let's slow down, whatever. I just broke up with this horrible woman named Fran. And then the Challenger exploded. And he said, okay, Madeleine, let's throw caution to the wind.
Life's too short.
Life's too short. Let's go out in a burst of flames like Krista McAuliffe, which was probably too soon for the joke.
Yeah, I know.
But so then we have this whirlwind 9-month love affair. And at the end, the show Domenica Inn that I'm working for Italian TV sends us 2 tickets, business class. It was a different time to go to Rome to be there for the last show and the party. And we do, and they, fly us business, and we have a limo, and we're at the Hilton and in Rome, and it's on top of one of the 7 hills. You've heard of them. And the host of my show, Mino D'Amato, gives us his house on the Mediterranean, and he's coming through rolling his eyes. And it's like heard the story too many times. Like, oh. And we spend like 6 nights. It's a honeymoon, but then I have to stay in Italy because my parents have just bought a little place in Tuscany, and which would become their like under the Tuscan sun, year in Provence type experience. Because but they don't speak Italian yet, so I'm helping them, put in toilets and bidets and faucets. And I stay for 2 more weeks in Siena, and there's no internet, there's no Facebook,
cell
can't
phones,
make phone calls.
nothing.
They cost $1 million. It's just a night, whatever. So, but the whole time I'm on cloud 9 and I'm so madly in love. And I come home and he's not at the airport. And I go into my bedroom of my friend Susanna, who would be my roommate for 7 years. And I see a note on my pillow in her mother's handwriting on yellow legal paper, but I don't read it because I'm where's Sam? So I pick up the phone and it's attached to the wall, just carbon dates the story. And I call him and I get a really long pause and I have a sense that something is not right. And then he says the words that you never want to hear, which are,
it's not you.
We need to talk.
We need to talk.
No one ever says, we need to talk. I want to give you a massage. They always say, we need to talk. I'm about to destroy your spirit. And he says, I'm back with Fran. So everything
but
stops.
Fran was horrible.
She's horrible. And the room starts spinning and I drop the phone and I see it going down in slow motion. And I'm looking for something to hold on to. And I realize I have this piece of paper in my hand and I don't know why, but I look at it and it says, call Darcy about a job at Letterman.
No.
So in that moment, my heart was broken and all my dreams came true. And I dove into getting the job at Letterman, which I would get. And I stayed there for 6 years and it was my graduate school. And one of the things that I did was produce all the cooking segments. So I was getting private lessons. Julia Child, I can call a friend.
Julia Child?
Oh, Julia. And,
you've met Julia Child?
Oh, several times. We were friends, I'm telling you. Yeah. Julia Child, Wolfgang Puck.
I'm so jealous.
Bobby Flay, all the, star chefs of the time. Emerald Gossi.
I am so jealous.
I was jealous of myself.
I'm just imagining you and Julia Child making dark orange and real shrimp cocktail.
Yeah, well, she made like a burger and the burner broke, so she made it with a blowtorch. It was like a famous segment.
I hope you have pictures of this.
But the show that I'm developing now, Man in the Kitchen Live, owes a lot to Julia. The way that I describe it is if Julia Child and Lucille Ball and David Letterman had a baby and that baby was a comedy cooking show, this is what Man in the Kitchen would be. Because I want that spontaneity and there's no such thing as an accident and have it go through. But all of this is to go back to the Dow.
Absolutely.
Somebody took care of me. Somebody took care of me. My heart was broken. That could have been the worst moment of my entire life. I could never have recovered. Instead, I never even processed it. And then 30 years later, he finds me on Facebook and asks me, do you remember me? And I'm like, are you joking? Are you joking? Like, do you think any woman has forgotten any man that ever broke her heart? That does not happen. I could have
a wall-mounted telephone.
Yeah, on a wall-mounted telephone. That's never going away. So anyway, I'm older now. I'm 62. I just turned 62.
Congratulations.
And it is so liberating because I am having the time of my life. I'm just trying to only accept the fun parts. And if anything isn't fun, I just say no, because I know that my husband, he's trying to retire and he's waiting for me to go travel the world. And I'm like, no, I'm doing this thing. But if the thing doesn't happen, I'll just go, okay, I'm not doing the thing. Let's go. I've always wanted to go to South Africa and visit Eugene.
You'd love it here. Look,
I know.
I've just mapped it out in my head that I think the universe has had it that you and Sam meet at the most interesting times of your life. He's a catalyst for your change, right? He always precedes change in your life. Would you say?
Oh my God, that's a really good point. Yeah. That is a really good point. He does. And inadvertently or unintentionally or even counterintuitively,
absolutely,
he leads me to my next professional adventure.
Yes.
But the irony here is one time he did it by coming back into my life, but one time he did it by leaving it.
Yes. He always meets you at the precipice. I think you guys have a soul agreement and a soul appointment to always take you to the next level. I think if you do a past life regression, you'd find that Sam has always been there.
I think so. And that's probably why when you asked me what he was doing at the art opening, he was just, appearing in the way that he was meant to appear. Because I did have that feeling of him. Yes. That I knew him. Like it was an instant, there was a light around him. And this sounds so not me because I'm very cynical, remember?
Yeah. I'm bordering on agnostic.
But you know what? The older I get, the more I don't want to say this out loud because I don't want to jinx myself, but I feel like I have lived a very magical existence, and that I have had more opportunities to create. Like, think of it like, if you're a creative person, what more could you create than the definitive TV show that would, you know, turn horrible things into delightful humor and commentary for everybody? You know, it's been you know, really sort of strange. But I've also had really, really tough times. So, you know, I always say, if you looked at the EKG of my life, it would look like a person in you know, coronary trauma. But in the end, the highs probably will bring the lows up to a sustainable level.
This is arguably the best time we've had chatting to someone. You are so interesting.
Oh!
And just to give you
Anytime.
a brief background of how the universe will always just play a trick on you, is everything that you said I relate to, because our pivot was exactly that. It was, I had just come back from the US. I'd done Australia, doing some shows over there after a while of thinking to myself, am I still good at this comedy thing? And I went to Australia, the festival, and I came back from Australia. I went to LA and I went to New York, and I spent some time at the Daily Show as well. And then I came back knowing somehow that in 2020, I'll be able to go back there again and there'll be more inroads. And all of a sudden COVID happened and it felt like nothing was going to happen. And then I became a guest on Josh's podcast. And then from then onwards, we hit it off. Then he suggested I start my own podcast. And then I was watching so much TV that I thought, maybe there should be stuff that I would enjoy watching besides the stuff that I hate watching. Then I started thinking about shows that I should be making, or I could pitch, or I could write. Then I threw my hat in the ring, and I picked some really interesting stories of people in this country that I knew of and whose stories I would like to explore. Then I taught myself how to write the pitch deck, and I did that, and I pitched the shows, and the shows will be made soon. And
that's amazing.
That's not Madeleine. I'm gonna cut you off here. I don't want you to get excited just yet, and excite me even more by the next part that you're going to tell me. Is I'm gonna tell you the next part. Coincidentally, 20 days before that move to a set place that has the home office that we're gonna turn into a studio, who do we chat to? The most talented TV creator of all time, who makes a show that I went to when the last time I was in the States, and who is the co-creator of all the shows that Josh enjoys. Now you can get excited for us.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's folding in on itself. Well, yes. I hope you have an extra room at your house at the beach, because I'm serious about us coming there. You guys, I gotta go.
Have a great day. Say hello to Sam.
You guys, I gotta